My mother died of a sudden heart attack at 58, and I thought I knew everything about her. She was Donna Clark, an executive assistant who lived quietly in a small house, reading novels every evening and asking about my life over Sunday dinners. Then came the will reading, and the lawyer handed me a sealed envelope containing an old photograph and an old key. "Before you can access your inheritance," the will stated, "you must find the man in this photograph and give him this key." The man was a stranger, and I had no idea I was about to discover my mother had lived an entire secret life I never knew existed. Before we dive in, have you ever discovered something surprising about a parent or loved one after they were gone? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you love stories about hidden identities, unexpected legacies, and the complexity of the people we think we know, please subscribe so you don't miss our next one. Now, let me take you back to the day I learned my mother wasn't who I thought she was. My mother died on a Tuesday in October. Donna Clark was 58 years old, and she'd been complaining of heartburn for a few days. Nothing that seemed serious, nothing that made either of us worry. She'd gone to bed early that Monday night, and when I called her Tuesday morning for our usual check-in, she didn't answer. I'd driven to her house, a small, tidy bungalow where she'd lived alone since I'd moved out at 22. I'd found her in her bed, looking peaceful, already gone. The paramedics told me it had been a massive heart attack, probably in her sleep. She hadn't suffered. That was supposed to be a comfort, but it wasn't. She was 58. She should have had decades left. And now she was just gone. So at 31 years old, I became an orphan. My father had left when I was 2. I had no memories of him, no relationship, just a name on a birth certificate, and some child support payments. That had stopped when I turned 18. It had always been just my mom and me, and now it was just me. The funeral was small. My mother had been a private person with few close friends. Her co-workers from the law firm where she'd worked as an executive assistant for 25 years came. A few neighbors, my girlfriend Melanie. That was it. Everyone said the same things. She was so kind, so quiet. She kept to herself, but she was always pleasant. It was a eulogy of pleasantness, of a woman who'd lived quietly and left no particular mark on the world beyond being a good employee and a loving mother. I'd thought I knew everything about my mother. She'd worked the same job my entire life. She'd lived in the same modest house. She'd spent her evenings reading, always reading, her house filled with books, her Kindle constantly loaded with new novels. She'd asked about my work as a software developer, attended my college graduation, met Melanie, and genuinely liked her. She'd been steady, reliable, unremarkable in the way that good, quiet people often are. A week after the funeral, I met with her lawyer to handle the estate. I expected it to be straightforward. She had the house, probably some savings, maybe a small life insurance policy. Nothing complicated. Robert Park, her lawyer, was a man in his 60s who had handled her will and basic legal matters for years. He greeted me with professional sympathy and pulled out a folder. "Your mother's estate is relatively simple in structure, but there's an unusual condition attached to the primary inheritance." "What kind of condition?"
He pulled out a sealed envelope, thick, cream-colored paper, with my name written in my mother's neat handwriting. She left specific instructions. "I'm to give you this envelope. Inside are a photograph and a key. You're to find the man in the photograph and deliver the key to him. Only after you've completed this task can the full inheritance be distributed." I stared at him. That's bizarre. Why would she do that? I don't know. She set this up 5 years ago and updated it annually to ensure the instructions remained current. She was very clear that this task must be completed before you could access the primary inheritance. And if I don't complete it? The estate remains in trust. The house and her savings, about $75,000, transferred to you immediately. But there's a secondary account and some additional assets that can only be accessed after the task is complete. What kind of assets? I don't know. She didn't disclose that to me. The instructions simply say that once you've delivered the key, I'm to provide you with documents held in a sealed safe deposit box. This was insane. My practical, straightforward mother had created some kind of treasure hunt from beyond the grave? Park handed me the envelope. I'm sorry for your loss, Henry. And I'm sorry this is more complicated than it should be, but your mother was very specific about these instructions. I took the envelope home and opened it with shaking hands. Inside were 2 items: an old key, ornate and old-fashioned, attached to a simple chain, and a photograph. The photo was old, probably from the 1990s based on the quality and the faded colors. It showed my mother, maybe in her mid-30s, younger than I'd ever really known her, since my earliest clear memories were from when I was about 5. She was standing in front of what looked like an antique shop, smiling genuinely, her arm around a man I'd never seen before. The man appeared to be about the same age as my mother, maybe late 30s in the photo. He was tall, thin, with dark hair and glasses, wearing a cardigan that gave him a slightly professorial look. He was smiling too, and there was an ease between them in the photo, the body language of people who were comfortable with each other, familiar. Behind them, partially visible in the shop window, was a sign. I could make out fragments of letters: STRICORNCLOC. Who was this man? Why had my mother never mentioned him, and why was I supposed to find him 20-some years later and give him a key? I called Melanie, who came over immediately. Together, we examined the photo under better light, trying to extract any information we could. "The sign," Melanie said, pointing. "Can you make out what it says?" I looked closer. "It looks like STRICORNCLOC. Maybe Capricorn clock something?" Melanie pulled out her phone and started searching. "Capricorn Clock Repair," she said after a moment. "There's a shop by that name in Seattle. It's been there for over 40 years. Seattle was about 2 hours from home, close enough for my mother to have visited, though I had no memory of her ever going there during my childhood. The owner is listed as Stephen Foster," Melanie continued, reading from the shop's minimal website. "No photos, no biography, just an address and phone number. Stephen Foster." The name meant nothing to me. I'd never heard my mother mention anyone by that name. "You should call," Melanie suggested. I tried. The phone rang 6 times before going to a generic voicemail. I left a message. "My name is Henry Clark. I'm trying to reach Stephen Foster regarding Donna Clark. Please call me back." He didn't call back that day or the next.
After 3 days of waiting, I decided to just drive to Seattle. I had the photograph, I had the key, and I had nothing but questions. The address led me to an older part of Seattle, a neighborhood of small shops and aging buildings that had somehow avoided gentrification. Capricorn Clock Repair was squeezed between a used bookstore and a shop that sold vintage vinyl records. The shop window was cluttered with antique clocks, grandfather clocks, mantel clocks, cuckoo clocks, pocket watches. A hand-lettered sign in the window said, "Repairs by appointment only." I tried the door. It was locked. I knocked, waited, knocked again. Finally, a voice from inside. "We're closed." "Mr. Foster, I need to talk to you about Donna Clark." A long silence. Then the sound of locks turning. The door opened a crack, and a man peered out, late 50s, thin, with gray hair and glasses.
The same man from the photograph, just 25 years older. "Donna Clark," he repeated, his voice careful. "What about her?" "She was my mother. She died 2 weeks ago." The man's face went white. He gripped the doorframe, his knees seeming to buckle. "Donna is dead?" "Yes, I'm sorry. I know you were friends. I have a photograph of you together. She left instructions in her will. I'm supposed to give you something." Stephen Foster opened the door fully, his eyes devastated. "Come in." The interior of the shop was overwhelming. Clocks everywhere, covering every wall, filling every surface. The ticking was almost deafening, hundreds of mechanisms marking time and slightly different rhythms. The shop smelled of oil and old wood and time itself. Stephen led me to a small back room that served as an office, clearing papers from a chair so I could sit. He sank into the chair behind the desk, looking at me with an expression of profound grief. "I should have visited her," he said, more to himself than to me. "I should have checked on her, but she was so insistent about the distance, about keeping things separate." "Mr. Foster, I don't understand. How did you know my mother?" He looked at me with something like surprise. "She never told you about me?" "No, I'd never heard your name until I found your shop. This photograph is the only evidence I have that you even knew each other." I pulled out the photo and placed it on the desk. Stephen picked it up, his hands shaking. "This was taken 26 years ago. We'd just celebrated her first novel being published. She was so happy that day." "Novel? My mother wasn't a writer. She was an executive assistant." Stephen looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Henry, your mother was one of the most talented writers of her generation. She just never let anyone know it." I stared at him. "What are you talking about?" "Did she send you here with something? She always said if anything happened to her, there would be a key." Wordlessly, I pulled out the old key and handed it to him. Stephen took it, stood up, and walked back into the main shop. I followed, watching as he approached a massive grandfather clock in the corner, easily 8 feet tall, made of dark wood with intricate carvings, clearly an antique worth far more than anything else in the cluttered shop. He inserted the key into a small lock at the base of the clock that I hadn't even noticed. The lock turned, and a hidden panel swung open, revealing a compartment I never would have known existed. Inside was a leather portfolio, thick with papers, and several other items I couldn't make out from where I stood. Stephen pulled out the portfolio and handed it to me with reverent care. "Your mother was M. Hicks. The M. Hicks. And this is her legacy." I opened the portfolio with shaking hands. Inside were manuscripts, printed pages, contracts, letters, and on top a sealed envelope with my name in my mother's handwriting. "M. Hicks?" I repeated, the name triggering something in my memory. The novelist? The one who wrote The Distance Between Stars and Quiet Revolutions? "And 10 others," Stephen confirmed. 12 books over 26 years, all bestsellers, all critically acclaimed, all written by your mother. I sat down heavily on the floor of the clock shop, the portfolio in my lap, my mind unable to process what I was hearing. M. Hicks was famous. Not blockbuster famous, but literary famous. The kind of author who won awards, who was taught in university classes, who was interviewed by NPR and had essays written about the profound themes in their work. And that author was my mother? My mother, who worked as an executive assistant, who lived in a small house in a small town, who spent her evenings reading but never ever talked about writing. I don't understand, I said. Why would she hide this? Stephen sat down on the floor beside me, both of us surrounded by ticking clocks. Because your mother was terrified of being seen. She had severe social anxiety. The idea of fame, of interviews, of people knowing her name and her face, it paralyzed her. He took a breath. We met in college. We were both English majors, both wanted to be writers. After graduation, I opened this shop because I needed reliable income. Writing wasn't paying the bills. Donna got her job as an assistant, but she never stopped writing. When was her first book published? 1999. You were 5 years old. She used a pseudonym and insisted on complete anonymity. No author photos, no interviews, no book tours. Her publisher agreed because the books were so good they'd sell themselves. And they did. Stephen pulled out more papers from the portfolio. Contracts, royalty statements, reviews. Every month, I'd collect her mail from a P.O. box she rented under the pseudonym. We'd meet for lunch, and she'd give me new manuscripts or sign paperwork. I helped her navigate the business side of publishing while maintaining her anonymity. Why didn't she tell me? She wanted to. She almost did, many times. But year after year, the secret got bigger and harder to confess. She worried you'd feel betrayed. She worried that if you knew, others might find out. And most of all, she was ashamed. Ashamed of being a brilliant novelist? Ashamed that she was too scared to claim her own work? Ashamed that she hid behind a pseudonym while other writers stood proudly behind their names? She said once that she felt like a fraud, not because she hadn't written the books, but because she was too cowardly to own them. I pulled out the envelope with my name on it, opened it with trembling hands. Inside were several pages in my mother's handwriting. I began to read. My dearest Henry, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and Stephen has given you the key to the truth I was too afraid to tell you while I was alive. I'm sorry. I'm so desperately sorry that you had to learn about this part of my life after I was gone, that I didn't have the courage to share it with you when I could have seen your face, answered your questions, explained myself properly. But I was always too afraid. Afraid of judgment, afraid that you'd think I'd lied to you your whole life, afraid that my secret identity would be exposed and I'd have to face the fame and attention I've spent almost 30 years avoiding. I know that doesn't make sense. I know it seems absurd that someone would write books that millions of people read and then hide from the very success they achieved. But Henry, I've been afraid my entire life. Afraid of being seen, of being known, of being judged. The only place I was never afraid was in my writing, and with you. Every book I wrote was a love letter to you, even though you didn't know it. The themes I explored, single mothers finding strength, children discovering their identities, people learning to be brave. They were all inspired by our life together, by the ways you made me want to be better, even though I was too scared to actually be better. The money from the books, and there is money, more than you probably imagine, is yours now. It's in a separate account, managed by a financial advisor whose contact information Stephen will give you. The royalties for my 12 published books, invested over 3 decades, have grown substantially. But more than the money, I'm leaving you my words. In this portfolio is my final manuscript, my 13th book. It's called The Woman Who Hid, and it's the most honest thing I ever wrote. It's about a mother who lives a secret life and the son who discovers the truth after she's gone. It's about fear and love and the ways we fail the people we love most. I want you to publish it, not under M. Hicks, under my real name, Donna Clark.
Let the world know that M. Hicks was a scared woman from a small town in Oregon who wrote books in secret while raising her son alone. Let them know that the distance between who we are and who we pretend to be can be enormous, and that sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we hide from most. I'm sorry I was too afraid to live openly. I'm sorry I chose secrecy over honesty with you. I'm sorry for all the ways my fear limited both our lives. But Henry, I need you to know, being your mother was the only thing I was never afraid of. That was the one role where I never felt like I was pretending. Every other part of my life was performed from behind a pseudonym or a professional mask, but with you, I was always just Mom, and that was always enough. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to show you all of who I was. Mom. I was crying by the time I finished. Stephen was crying too. We sat there on the floor of the clock shop, surrounded by ticking timepieces, mourning a woman who'd lived 2 lives and been too afraid to let them intersect. She wrote 12 books, I said finally. I can read them. I can get to know her through them. They're beautiful, Stephen. Every single one. Your mother had a gift for capturing what make us human. Over the next several months, I read everything. All 12 published novels, recognizing my mother's voice in every sentence, even though I'd never known she was the one writing them. The final manuscript, The Woman Who Hid, which was so clearly autobiographical it hurt to read. And the business documents, the contracts, the royalty statements showing that M. Hicks had earned substantial money, invested wisely over decades, now totaling over $4 million. My mother had been rich. She'd been successful. She'd been famous, in a way. And she lived in a small house, working a job she didn't need, hiding it all from everyone, including me. Melanie helped me process. She wasn't trying to hurt you, she said one evening as we sat in my mother's house, surrounded by her books. She was just scared. Some people are scared of failure. Your mom was scared of success. I wish she'd told me. I wish I'd known her fully. But you did know her. The important parts. She was your mom. She loved you. She supported you. The writing was her private world, but you were her public one. Maybe she needed both. Stephen became an unexpected presence in my life. We met regularly, and he shared stories about my mother I'd never heard. Her humor, her perfectionism, her joy when a particularly difficult sentence finally worked. She talked about you constantly, Stephen told me. Every lunch, every meeting. She'd tell me about your achievements, your girlfriend, your life. You were her favorite topic. Did she ever say why she didn't tell me? She said once that she'd created this wall between her 2 lives, and the longer it stood, the harder it was to tear down. She worried that if she told you, everything would collapse, the anonymity, the careful separation. She convinced herself she was protecting you from the chaos of her secret life. But really, I think she was protecting herself from having to be brave. 6 months after my mother's death, I published her final manuscript under her real name. Not M. Hicks, Donna Clark. And I included a foreword explaining who she was, why she'd hidden, and what her work meant. The publishing industry was stunned. M. Hicks, reclusive, anonymous, mysterious, was revealed to be an executive assistant from Oregon who'd written 12 acclaimed novels while working full-time and raising a son alone. The book became a bestseller immediately, not just because of the reveal, but because it was genuinely brilliant. My mother's best work, the most honest exploration of fear and identity she'd ever written. I did interviews, something my mother never would have done. I talked about her, about the double life she'd led, about what it meant to discover your parent had hidden entire worlds from you. "Are you angry?" a journalist asked me during one interview. I thought about it. I was at first. Angry she didn't trust me with the truth. But now I understand. She wasn't hiding from me. She was hiding from herself,
from the idea of being seen, being known. And in a way, her secrecy was its own kind of love letter. She protected her private writing world so fiercely because that's where she processed everything she couldn't say out loud, including how much she loved me. The book launch for The Woman Who Hid was held in Seattle at a bookstore near Stephen's shop. Melanie was there, and Stephen, and a room full of people who'd loved M. Hicks's work and were eager to finally put a real name and story to the pseudonym. I spoke about my mother for 20 minutes, not as the famous novelist, but as the woman who'd raised me, who'd made me breakfast and helped with homework and asked about my day, who lived a secret life but never let that secret diminish her presence in mine. My mother was M. Hicks, but more importantly, she was Donna Clark. She wasn't perfect. Her secrecy hurt both of us in ways we can't undo, but she was real, and she was mine, and I'm proud to finally share her work with you under her real name. The inheritance, the $4 million in royalties and investments, allowed me to make changes in my own life. I quit my software job and opened a startup related to reading and writing books. Melanie and I got engaged, planning a beautiful wedding my mother would have loved. And I read. I read all 12 of my mother's novels over and over, getting to know her through her words in ways I'd never known her in life. I found myself in her characters, the sons struggling with identity, the children of single mothers learning to be independent. I found her fears in her themes, the terror of being truly seen, the ways we hide our authentic selves. 1 year after her death, I visited her grave with Stephen. We brought flowers and sat on the grass, talking to her the way we both wished we'd been able to while she was alive.
She would be so proud of what you've done, Stephen said. Publishing her work under her real name, letting people know who she was. That took courage she never had. I'm doing what she asked, finishing her story the way she wanted but couldn't do herself. You're doing more than that. You're living openly in a way she never could. The eyes are on you now. You're brave for both of you. I looked at her headstone. We'd updated it after the revelation, adding her pseudonym, Donna Clark, 1967-2025, loving mother and prestigious author, M. Hicks. I wish I'd known, I said. I wish she'd trusted me with this. She did trust you, Stephen said, just not until after she was gone. The key, the photograph, the manuscript, that was all trust. She trusted you to understand, to forgive, to share her secret with the world in the way she couldn't. She knew you'd be brave enough to claim her work when she was too scared to claim it herself. He was right. The inheritance wasn't just money or manuscripts. It was trust. It was my mother, in her final act, finally letting me see all of her, the brilliant novelist and the terrified woman, the celebrated author and the scared single mom, the public pseudonym and the private person. I didn't get to know this part of her while she was alive, but I know it now, through 12 novels and 1 final manuscript, through royalty statements and contracts, through Stephen's stories and my own reading. I've gotten to know Donna Clark, the writer, as well as I knew Donna Clark, the mother. My mother hid her success because she was afraid of being seen as successful. She hid her talent because claiming it would require a bravery she didn't possess. But she gave me that bravery as an inheritance, the courage to stand in bookstores and own her work, the strength to tell her story honestly, the ability to be publicly proud of someone who was privately brilliant. She wrote 13 books. 12 were published under a pseudonym that hid her. The 13th was published under her real name and revealed everything. And now, when people read M. Hicks, they know who she really was. Donna Clark, executive assistant by day, novelist by night.
single mother who raised a son while writing masterpieces in secret. What would you do if you discovered a parent had an entire secret life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story about hidden identities, unexpected legacies, and learning to understand the complexity of the people we love touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more meaningful stories every day. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss our next compelling tale. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.